Hey Charlie, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, Jamie. I am working from home, and so far so good. It's
No
Tuesday.
way, you're working from home. That's crazy. Seems
Yeah.
everyone's doing that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a thing at the minute.
I
It's
know,
strange.
it's like a trend.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like one of those trends that everyone's hoping to die pretty soon.
Oh
So
my dear.
looking forward to getting back in the office.
But also like on another sort of level, there is a roadmap, right, that the government has set out, but there's all these protests that are happening in London about anti-lockdown, and I'm a bit confused. Maybe you can enlighten me. But like people are going on protests going against the lockdown regime, but there's a clear roadmap that we're coming out of lockdown. So I don't understand what they are protesting about.
I mean, I guess I mean, your guess is as good as
Yeah,
mine.
it's just
I
I
mean,
don't understand it.
I wasn't out there. I wasn't out there banging that particular drum, but and it does seem at least there's some relief and a way out. But I guess with all the various kind of political things that seem to have happened, anything that spikes and it is a point of entry into society for people, and it's an opportunity, I guess, to be heard. I think being at home all the time, or within your bubble, if you feel strongly about something with the internet, so many voices can find their place to meet up and have these discussions. And it's like, it seems to be like, you light that flame and it fans and everybody finds themselves out there and they're like, shit, there's people here. Brilliant.
Yeah, because it was also happening in Bristol as well. I don't know. I don't know if you heard about it in Bristol, but there were some people who were protesting just normally, and then there was a group of people who just took it an extra step further and was
Yeah.
setting fire to like police vans and stuff against police gaining more power and like funding or something. This is what I read.
Well, I mean, it was a strange one because when I saw it was called Kill the Bill, I was like, is that old Bill? Because that's a little bit.
Yeah.
Kill the Bill was the name of this thing, and I mean, whether or not it was just done in a kind of reactionary way or it was about a particular bill, I don't know. But you're bound to get conflict with a headline like that, right?
Yeah, and it's just that there's just so much kind of going on in what is right and morality at the moment, especially with the rape murder with Sarah. I think it was last week or the week after, and so obviously that's really been heightened, and obviously
Yeah.
people are a bit tentative at the moment with even with police because of the George Floyd thing, and obviously that was in America, but there's been a lot of kind of look on what are police and how they're being run as well.
Completely. It's been in every single way, obviously, one of the strangest years, and hopefully one that will kind of live within a slight capsule, and that we can go, wow, that's what happens when you put everyone inside. And
Yeah.
but it's been a kind of pause of a year, hasn't it? And so much time for introspection and reflection, and kind of
Mm.
what do I think about things. People have really kind of been given that time to think, I guess, and also latch on to things that maybe they hadn't thought about as well. So yeah, it does feel like one particular cause after another, and obviously lots of them extremely worthy, and thank God they've happened. Those questions have been asked, but um it does, you kind of feel like, when can people focus a little bit more on other things and hopefully
Yeah.
get engaged in society and do
Yeah.
things, as much as
Yeah.
protest is a brilliant thing.
Yeah. And so, because you have a really unique job, like as head of talent for Rogue Films, and has it made you? Because a lot of people have been reflecting on their path and their journey. Has it also been for you as well about where you are at and where you want to go and stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, I have to say, it's kind of just been happening, and staying afloat has been the number one thing. But
Yeah.
even in since we initially spoke, and you very kindly invited me to come and talk to you, I had a little think, and what that journey has looked like, and how I have ended up in where I am, and it feels like it's been a blink of an eye, but actually there is a kind of course of different roles and jobs I had, which all seem to have gone in the same direction. And there's been quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is your journey then? Like, tell me, like, from the beginning. Did you, when you were even like a child, did you want to work in production, working with filmmakers? Where did it all start?
Well, it's one. I mean, I was very lucky. My dad was a director, and he was once a long time ago. He was in the 70s and 80s. He was kind of a bit of a face, and he directed amazing things like The Fast Show. I mean, very kind of comedy sketch show of its time. And it felt like this completely other world. If you, I don't know if you know people, or if you have people who work in production, it's a kind of a strange job because they go away and then they come back. Particularly a director, it's a job where you don't get up in the morning and go to work. He was there or he wasn't there, and if he wasn't there, he was at work. And it was this whole other world of, you're a kid, you do what you do. Although it was amazing, probably you take it for granted and go, this amazing thing. I mean, and he has a journey all of his own as how he got there, but it didn't really feel like part of my life in a strange way. And throughout, growing up, although I was interested in watching TV, like most kids, as opposed to necessarily the process. And you kind of think, oh, it'd be amazing to be a director. But I remember my dad saying, if you're a director, you make films. If you're a photographer, you take photos. You're a musician, you pick up the guitar and you play, and that's what you do, because that's what drives you to be that person. And I never had that instinct necessarily to pick up a camera and want to make films in terms of the actual, the process, whereas the larger process of finding an idea and putting something together always fascinated me. So it was, over a course of time, music was what I was initially, was attracted to. And I studied music, and, I used to produce music, and I was a DJ, in the garage days and all of that. And I thought it was brilliant.
Everyone was a DJ, or everyone is becoming a DJ now.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, at the time, I had decks in a tiny little garden shed that I had at the back of my mum and dad's house, and all my mates used to come by and sit in there and smoke weed, basically, and play sort of all the songs now which are coming round again. And it was brilliant, but there was no exposure at the time. We used to make tapes, like actual tapes, and take them to school, and it was brilliant. I mean, I had lots of friends that had MC names, and I won't go into what my DJ name was, but I had no particular audience other than my my pals. But even through that process, there was a point that I had friends that were very talented, that were MCs, and I thought, and I loved that, and I was drawn to that, and I was excited by the not just the skill and the intrinsic talent that they had, but the ability to reach the people that were good. Oftentimes what you find, though, is that the people that are very good at things are very good at that thing. And the other part of it, which is the promotion and all the rest of it, requires another skill. And I was always fully infused by people that had those skills, and felt that, duty bound almost to kind of, introduce people to what they did. So, I studied music and I produced music, but it was almost in order to create a platform for the people that I thought were that good, that, maybe it was a singer, and I worked and collaborated with all sorts of people, less so about what I could do, more to elevate what they could do. And it sounds like a strange thing, doesn't it? It's like, so what you did in order for other people to shine. But I think that, like, they kind of go hand in hand. In order for them to shine, it requires a certain, drive to push that to the forefront. So, that was kind of my initial introduction to that world of wanting to be a part of it, as opposed to maybe the front man. And I have done lots and lots of jobs. I did made tea and coffee, and was a runner straight out of school.
But was you a good team maker? That's my first question. Was you a good team maker?
Shocking. I was belligerent. I was, lazy. I wasn't a great runner, I'm not going to lie. But I was keen to be involved, and I always thought, well, I want to do the good bit, and I forgot that you have to go through the shit first in
Yeah,
order
but
in order
to
to
be a
get there.
really good runner, I once had it on a set. I was feeling a bit really rough because I had some. I'm allergic to chili, and basically a couple of days beforehand, I had a chili intake, and I was really bad. And then a couple of days later, I had to do a job, and I was really still coming off this chili thing. And I was on set, and we are in this random place, and it's like a 3-day job. And I was just not talking to anyone because I was feeling really ill. And this runner came up to me, and this is what I always remember his name now. He's called Daniel. And if you're listening, Daniel, amazing. And basically, there was no coffee place in sight, and I just said, you know, I really like a decaf oat milk latte because that's my coffee choice. And this guy went out like for 30 minutes searching for his coffee just to like make me feel a bit better because I was white, I was just like awful. And he went out of his way, he got it, and then he gave it to me, and I give him a massive hug, and I was just like, I'm so grateful that you've done that. Like you paid there's a bit of tension. You could understand that I was in such pain and just torment from this illness. But I always believe that runners, I mean, people say that runners are these people that they run around, they get things, but they're human beings, one. And two, they really make the environment so much better if you've got a good runner who is paying attention to the energy and just going, if you need water, I'm on water. Because like sometimes you have the talents are on set and they just need the water and they need it straight away because we've only got a certain amount of time to shoot a look or whatever that is. And if a runner's really on it and has got the water ready, it makes such a massive difference to the whole production. And I've always believed that runners are such an essential, hard-working position, and you shouldn't just write it off as, oh, it's just a runner.
No, I mean, you know, runners, and often, you know, people have, you know, stories like ours, you know, or having been a runner or know a runner, you know, there is a trajectory, and you have to get in at one point, and the graft that you put in at that stage is invaluable. I mean, I went from being an office runner, I then went on to set and working on location and up at 5 a.m, and your introduction to the world of production, or, you know, I was lucky enough to work in lots of different departments because of that. You know, I was able to work in the camera department, the art department. I was kind of a trainee spark for a bit, working with fantastic people. And, you know, some of the stories and the great characters that you meet, you almost get like a strange bird's eye view because you're almost a bit invisible. You know, you're visible in that you're omnipresent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone needs you when they need you. They'd
Yeah,
rather you don't
yeah,
fucking exist.
yeah.
So you get this strange kind of insight, and you know, it always feels like you're kind of a bit of a voyeur as a runner. It's amazing because you can just kind of get a bit involved in lots of different things. But you know, it's true to say that the very good runners usually go on to be very good at, you know, a very good third, second, first AD, or, you know, and all those various other paths that they might take.
Yeah. So coming from running and having this experience to be a spark and all that sort of thing, and looking at the world that production live in and all the different roles, of course you said when you were DJing and doing music that you had an interest and passion for like promoting other people's talents and introducing. Was that still lingering when you were doing all these different roles and you knew that you sort of want to be more behind the scenes and nurturing and helping people's talent, and that was sort of a way in?
Well, I guess so. I mean, I really enjoyed it as a job, as a runner, but you know, you have to know what your progression is going to be. So it's fine going, well, I did a bit of that and I did a bit of that, but you really have to work out what path it is that you want to take, because every minute that goes by, you know, you could have been investing into becoming a cameraman or becoming a director or whatnot. And again, I didn't feel that real buzz to make my own short film, or, you know, at that point, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I knew I loved the world that I was inhabiting. So
Yeah.
it was kind of, I didn't feel a clear path. However, I then thought, this is really, really interesting, but I need to know what I wanted to do. And that's when I actually, after doing it for a few years, I stepped out of it because I didn't feel the thing that was pulling me in. And I thought I want to go and get a real job and learn about life, and maybe I'm interested in other things other than the thing which I kind of was almost presented as it was a fantastic option, but I didn't really know what the other options were. And I ended up working at Sony Music in marketing. I worked in I mean, talk about one to the other. I worked on a building site as a labourer, and then managed to blag a job, not even a job, an internship at a financial brokerage. So it was literally going from one to the
Wow.
other. And I went from wearing, builder's gear to wearing a suit. And I did a bit of work, a kind of placement at a PR firm. So I had all these really kind of strange, diverse experiences, but just the tip of the iceberg of any of them. And I found myself working for my uncle. He has a wine business. Again, I didn't know anything about wine, but he's like, you need a job. And it was tough times at the time. Finding a job was tricky. I don't have a degree. And he said, you can work in the warehouse. So I thought, great, I'll get a job. It's a job, that'll do. And I was driving a van and stacking crates of wine in a warehouse. And I got a call from a friend of mine who's an actor, and he said, look, what are you doing? And
I'm working in a wine shop, of course.
Obviously. And I'm like, I don't even drink wine. It was a
Oh,
job.
I would have loved that. I'm a massive wine drinker. I would have loved that, working in a wine shop.
Well, it was, I mean, this was in a warehouse. So I was up early. I was in a van, and I would fill the van, and I would drive from West Brompton in Fulham all the way through to East London and drop off wine at different restaurants. And it was go, go, go. I have to say, at the time, driving a van, I thought, if I could get paid for this really well, this is it. I fucking love it. A van on the road. The van rules, because you're driving quick and you just, anyway. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. I wasn't really interested in it. But this friend of mine said, look, he said, look, I'm working on a film in Berlin, and it's my first starring role, and I can have an assistant, and I think you need to get out of what you're doing because you don't enjoy it, and come and be my assistant on this film. And I found myself in Berlin for it turned out to be nearly 3 months, because there was stops, weather breaks. He ended up breaking his foot in the middle of filming, so they had to put the whole film on pause.
Okay.
It was mental. And basically I got a job which started off as, his assistant, but I ended up essentially being his agent's assistant. So I was he's got an agent in London, an agent in LA, and then there was me in the middle. And he basically said, look, you just fucking deal with it, Charles. If they need something, let them talk to you. And then you talk to me, and that's fine. Not in a prickish way, but in a way that it was a really intense shoot. And he's one of my best friends in the world. So, here I am living this entourage dream in my mind. And, and I thought, this is pretty great. I really like, I like this role. It's kind of, you get to kind of live vicariously, through this engagement with the production and with the agents and with everyone, but you're really there facilitating something.
Yeah.
And it really gives you a voice. And we did this film in 3 months, and he was like, look, great, we're gonna go to LA. I got another project, man. And I'm like, fucking done, wicked, my calling. And he's like, oh, look, on the last week of film, he said, my girlfriend's pregnant, and I'm gonna have to, after this, I'm going back to LA, and and the dream ends here. And so I was like, okay, and I'd quit my job, and I'd broken up with the girlfriend I was with at the time, and it was like I'd gone all in on this thing. And I came back, and I went back and lived at my mum's, and I was like, what do I do? So I found this thing called, I actually had a meeting with Duncan Heath, who's the supremo of independent talent. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I've had this little taste. I'd love to be an agent. He said, when's the last time you went to the theatre? And I said, well, I didn't go to the theatre. And I said, I saw Spamalot with my parents. And he's like, okay, that's not a great answer. He's like, go away and I want you to come back in 2 months, and I want you to have seen everything. So I went to the theater twice a week. I saw every film I could possibly watch, everything new. Went to the cinema, went on my own. You know, I would go and have an opinion and write my own little reviews. And funnily enough, I came back after 2 months, and he said, I'm taking a bit of a break from acting. My girlfriend's pregnant.
Oh
And
no! Oh, so
yeah,
frustrating. I mean, great,
my,
great they're getting pregnant, but it's so frustrating. Yeah,
yeah,
frustrating.
yeah. Well, he said, yeah, actually, his girlfriend had a baby born prematurely, and he had to take a bit of time away from the business. So I'm like, oh, back to square one again. But you know, it was just graft. I knew at that point what I wanted to do, and
Hustle. Yeah,
it was my brother-in-law gave me a great piece of advice, which I will stand by. And it basically was my driving force. And when I didn't have anything, when I did come back and I didn't know what was going on, he said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, you know, I want to be successful. And, you know, and it was a very vague answer. And he went, listen, Charlie, no fucker has ever said to me, don't want to do well. And I just want to just, you know, I don't want to be a success. This is the obvious answer. He said, find out what it is that you're good at, and find out what you can do, what you can get into, what's your way in. And I really just took it on board, and I tried to work out what it was I thought I was good at, what had been my driving force up to this point. So, you know, I assessed that and I stuck it, and I said, all right, well, I'm going to give myself a time. I was 28 at this point. I'm going to give myself a goal. And I said, by the time I'm 35, I want to be in this place. And I went back, and there's a thing called the PMA, which is like the APA, basically.
yeah.
And it's Production Managers Association, or whatever it's called. And I started at the top of all the agencies in London, and I just went through every single one and emailed them or called them or sent them my CV. And I did it every day. And I'd call them and say no, and I went for interviews and I didn't get the job. And it was just keep going. And I got to see, and a company called CMM based at Ealing Studios said, well, actually, our assistant's just left. Could you come in today? You know, we are interviewing. So I went in, and it was this tiny little office in Ealing Studios, which is an amazing, I think it's the oldest film studio in the UK.
It is.
And
I've been there. It's an amazing studio. It's so brilliant.
Awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this kind of mad lady comes out, and she's got these big dogs, and she's got this little office in the back, and she's like, look, can you start on Monday? And I was like, well, you know, we had an interview, had a little chat. I told her about my experience and da 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 da. She said, yeah, go on then. Let's see what you got. And I have to say, I did nearly 3 years there, and I worked my way up to being an agent. And it was one of the hardest jobs I've ever had. And it paid no money, but it had been, you know, it taught me thick skin. It taught me perseverance. And, you know, it was every day a graft. Every day, pick up the phone. You're calling people you don't know. They don't want to talk to you most of the time. It's you know, I mean, I have literally done so many jobs, including, you know, sales, where, you know, I worked for Talk for 2 weeks. And you knock on the door and you say, hi, I don't know if you heard about the, you know, the new landlines going up. Are you interested in buying Talk?
So,
you know, those fucking people.
I know, but like, so at this time, those 3 years, were you living at home still then? Is that how you, because obviously if you weren't paying, because obviously a lot of people love to do assistant and internships. Oh, right, yeah. Because a lot of people want to do internships and assistant stuff, but obviously the cost of London is so expensive, so it's quite difficult sometimes to do these sort of things unless you live at home.
I mean, it was. I mean, I've probably given you a kind of very convoluted timeline trying to work out what fitted in where. There was lots of different breaks and ups and downs, and living with mates, and, you know, being there, living with a girlfriend, or, you know, there was a time when I was completely unemployed. And I was on, you know, how I had housing benefit. I was going to the job seekers. They were paying my rent. I was living at a place where they'd cover X amount, and I got paid by, you know, £140 every 2 weeks by job seekers whilst looking for a job. You know, I was lucky enough to have friends that had spare rooms in flats, you know, and they would rent them out to me for, you know, just about an affordable amount. Mates rates, exactly. So it was a real graft, you know, and it was. But it really was the foundation of going, all right, I'm on this path now. I'm going to stick to this path. And and that kind of that led me up to my reintroduction to advertising.
Yeah. So in these moments of like, it's because I think everyone at the moment, even because we have COVID now, I think everyone is like sort of like grinding and hustling to kind of get things going and developing things. And some things that there's like you got your fingers in lots of different pies, and it sounds like there was so many opportunities where you thought it's going to go, and then it drops, and then you're like, okay, this is going to work. Okay, it's going to drop. What was your sort of mental approach? Did you have I'm assuming you had like your downers as well as your uppers.
Absolutely, man. It was tough. It was really tough. There was moments of, I mean, I still get them, of self-doubt, where you're just like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, am I making a terrible decision? Do I keep going with this, or, but I think perseverance is the key. And, someone asked, what would you say to somebody young in a business? And it was to stick at it, because it does get better. And it's about perseverance. It's about picking up the phone. It's about reach out. It's tricky because my job, as I'm sure what you do, it's very self-motivated. And there's no other fucker that's going to make you do it but you.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Some days you get up, you're like, I can't do this today. I can't be infused. But you can find it, whether or not it's like pick up a book for a bit, or turn on the telly, or go for a walk. You do those little switches to change up your perception are so important.
Yeah, and I was literally talking to my producer about this about an hour ago, about like when you have those moments where you feel like your mental approach isn't going to be productive anymore. It's okay just to like back off for a tiny second, go for that walk, or go and make that lunch and have an extra hour of lunch, and then come back, rather than go, I must do this, it's got to happen now. Like frustration, stress, and it doesn't really make the problem any easier, because stress doesn't work. And it's just really important to do as much as you possibly can. And then it comes to a point where the universe, if you believe in the universe, will do its thing. Like there's only so much you can do before like it becomes like out of your hands.
I mean, I completely agree with you. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think we do put pressure on ourselves to come up with the goods all the time. I mean, it is because you're testing yourself as much as anything, and the pressure to go, well, actually, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. It's a horrible realization to come to. So you're always kind of running from that. But I think that putting that amount of pressure on yourself and always having to come up with the goods, you might not be able to do it today, but tomorrow you probably will. And, I guess that's the kind of a general like mental health kind of approach to things, which is tomorrow might be better, or it will be better, or it can be better, or you can make it better.
There's a mantra that I say to myself every morning, and I've probably said it multiple times in this podcast, but I do this sort of like morning meditation, and I repeat to myself, happiness is a choice. Happiness is a choice. Because you can...
Whilst crying.
Whilst crying into my Louis Vuitton.
I'm joking.
No, but I always say that it's important to find what your content is at life, because content shouldn't really move, but happiness does move. Like you should be really content about what you do, but your happiness goes up and sort of down. And so I think that's the sort of mental approach that you can have, is that happiness is a choice. You can make yourself feel a bit happier by putting different things in place to make you feel better, that makes you feel good. Like it's like going for a walk, or going for a swim, or going for a run, things that you can do that makes you slightly more happy when you're feeling times of doubt.
I agree, but I also think that people expect happiness. It's a kind of an expectation that we're given. Being happy is something that I don't know what the word I'm trying to look for, but we take it for granted that you don't have to be happy all the time.
No, because it's not possible to be happy all the time, though.
Yeah, exactly. I know people worry that, why aren't I happy? Sometimes you do really great things when you're stressed, or when you're down, or introspection, or all those other things, and then you come out and you go, oh, now I'm happy because I did all that graft when I was
Exactly.
fucking miserable.
But science tells us though that it's really great at points to be stressed and anxious. Like there's a level of anxiety and stress that's really bad, but some good of it is really, really great. Like it's good to be anxious and stressed because that's when we sort of like we're in our uncomfortable state, and that's when we keep growing as a person. But the thing of like always be happy and always be present doesn't really always work, and it shouldn't always work. We can't always be present. Like there is a point where you need to look in the future, and there's a point where you need to slightly look in the past. I look at it like 75% of your time needs to be in the present, and the rest of those percentages you need to look at the future and look at the past, because you can't always be in the present moment. You can't always be happy, but you can obviously manage it.
Yes. Can I ask you a question? Which is,
of course, yeah.
You know, which is of all the, and it just occurred to me, you know, of all the, and it's a great thing that you're doing. I think it's great to kind of connect with people, engage with people, and it kind of makes you feel a bit human, you know, having an actual conversation as a.
Of course, of course.
And I wonder, you know, often Zooms in, you know, well, at least in my experience, a lot of it is quite salesy, and you know, people kind of want to get in touch for a reason. Have you found it therapeutic, you know, having these conversations with people, and you know, because I listened to a few of yours.
Yeah,
and it was great.
I always say to people, this is my therapy. Like my producer asked me today, like, oh, he was saying like we're talking about therapy. He said, "Do you have a therapist?" And I was like, "No, I don't need one." And I reflected on this, going, "I don't need one because I'm doing it pretty much every time I do a podcast. Like I just talk to people about loads of different topics about mental health, like perspective, like ambition, success, journeys, and understanding how people have overcome challenges and stuff. So it kind of lets it. I can relate to it in a certain way, or understand from their point of view, and then lets me reflect on my own journey. So yeah, it basically is like therapy for me, doing these sort of things.
Great. It's I listened to, and I think you've got such an interesting alumni, I guess, or whatever, of people that have done this. I was listening to Jovan's one earlier.
Oh yeah.
Because I used to work with Jovan at Stink, and he's such a great guy. We were, and he's kind of this kind of philosophical character as well. That you know, he's like, you know, like directors are, you know, of really kind of. They kind of exist in their own sphere within our industry. You know, we kind of are doing jobs, and they are doing their thing. Do you know what I mean? Whereas they get to go there, and it's this kind of, you know, larger than life characters. But I found him such an interesting bloke. I really like listening to his podcast, and having met him and hang out with him in Cannes at the Shots party, and you know, then also, you know, working on pitches with him and all sorts. It's nice to have such a kind of a rounded insight that you kind of you managed to get from people.
And it's the same thing because we had Joe Connor on. We had Joe Connor on as well, who's I think from Rogue Films as well.
He is indeed.
And so
one of the nicest men in the world.
He honestly generally is just a lovely guy. Every time I kind of like pick his brain, I'm like, who did the DP on this little film? And he gives me the name and links me to, and it's just like he has time for people, and that's what I love about him. But I think some of that you just try and go on is about, you get to see someone from a totally different perspective on this podcast, and that's what the beauty of kind of understanding someone from a 360 point of view. Like I keep saying this to a lot of people that come on the show, is that we only see some people from like their work or their social presence, and we have a perception of what they're going to be like depending on how their work is perceived and the way that they're curating it and stuff. And so it's so lovely to be talking to them on a personal point of view, to say, what's your favorite color, or what did you feel when you were doing this, or what was your childhood like? But you understand exactly where their headspace is. And so for me, when I look at their work next time, I go, oh, I can understand now why you've made that choice, or where it's come from, because now I know from what you're feeling. And also I think the days of like before social media, the internet, the idea of what celebrity is was that kind of hidden veil. And nowadays we have social media, we have podcasts and all that sort of thing, that these people who are these film directors, these CEOs of these companies, we can now have these kind of these conversations, and they're actually human beings, and they do have self-doubts, and they do have all these things that I'm feeling as well. And so it lets you connect to them in a totally different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I in my process, in my you know, when every time when I meet directors and and I start working with people, I kind of do something similar to this with them, and I love to sit there and almost interview them and say, can we have a bit of a your first impression conversation. I've worked a few places now and worked with lots of directors, and I want to interview them. I want to know what they're like. And so I'm really, it's very rare that you turn the other way around. Fuck, what do I do?
Exactly. Well, it's the thing, as I said before we started, it's like an A-B situation. Sometimes I'm A in this interviewer, and you're B. Sometimes you're A and you're B. It's not like you're interviewing me or I'm interviewing you. We're just having a conversation. And I think it's quite nice for it to be flipped now, that you actually just been having a conversation too, rather than you thinking about all the questions and you interviewing someone that you potentially were working with, or directors that you're pitching and stuff.
Yeah. No, I started kind of, I leave it to the last minute because I don't want to overthink this conversation too much. I'm sure what the questions I'll have an answer somewhere or another.
Yeah, I was going to say, I
started a list.
Did you start? See, I'm not. I feel like I'm not too. I don't throw really interesting political curveball questions. I'm like, okay, let's just, because I think I started off. Maybe I did start off going like really in depth, maybe like really philosophical questions, and then I think I really realized I was like, that would be really scary. If someone asked me those really like hard hitting questions, I'd be like, I think it's a bit too much. So I think I hope I come across more like friendly, and it's less of like
absolutely
on the spot sort of thing. Because I think if you're being ambushed, I think that's the worst thing.
Yeah, exactly. I guess you'll find some probably some quite interesting answers as well at this time in life. Given that there's so many political points, so many points of view as well. But I was thinking about all the different things, and what seems to be a strange point and a difficult point at the moment is polarization. So to then suddenly swerve back into this kind of pseudo intellectual answer, but it is that things are so polarized, and then the debate having a gray area, changing points of view it seems to be a thing that we're kind of lacking quite a lot at the moment. It's everyone think you're either left or you're right, you're red or you're blue. It's quite, having these conversations and being a part of society, I guess, is hopefully going to bring us into a bit more, I'm not saying a centralized position, but at least in a position where, when you're on your own, you find yourself reinforcing everything you do believe by, looking up all the, the evidence which supports your theory. So, if you leave people alone, for a year, those points of views that they had in the first place are going to become so entrenched. And the thing I love about this, and you're seeing with Clubhouse and all the various different platforms, is opportunities for people to get into a space where they can have a discussion, and hopefully that brings us some cohesion. Sorry, I don't really quite know where I was going with this, but it's so great that there are these platforms and they spring up, because it feels like a social necessity for people to engage with one another.
Yeah, so true. And so as we sort of round up our podcast, what we love to do on here is I'll give back to our audience. And so we've touched upon loads of different things about what you would like advise other people and other different topics. But what is one thing that's really inspired you or kind of kept you going to the point where you are at now that you would probably give to someone else that may be having times of doubt at the moment, or even an up or a down?
Now that is a. I mean, what do you mean, work wise, or do you just mean
Personal
generally?
life thing.
I mean, my job and my life are so intertwined, and I guess the thing that keeps pushing me forward and keeping me engaged is being interested. Basically, I think that the thing that has kept me going is keep engrossing yourself, immersing yourself in the things that you want to get better at, that you want to know more about, whether or not that is watching films on Netflix and having opinions and watching things that you don't normally watch. I've watched so much foreign cinema. It sounds a bit wanky to say, but it was like, I don't do enough of that, so let's do that. And when it comes to work, it's really getting to the root of of what motivates me, knowing as much as I can about the people I work with, whether it's my directors and looking through their show reels, finding out about their history, looking at our industry as a whole, what's required. Keep asking questions, essentially, I guess, is kind of what it boils down to. Asking myself questions that hopefully I can find some answer or solution to that might prove useful tomorrow.
Yeah, it's true.
In a nutshell. That's
Yeah,
a
in a
real
nutshell.
nutshell, isn't it?
I love it. Well, I want to say thank you so much for coming on 360 yourself. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you, and you're such a charming, nice guy with a great energy. So, and I hope it does come across, because I'm obviously seeing him and his smile and everything on Zoom. So hopefully the voice of the warmth and the energy that he's sharing with me shares to you as well. So thank you again so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.